On April 17, 2005, the state chapter in New Jersey celebrated its 5th class to be honored by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame with a Lifetime Service to Wrestling Award presented to Coach John M. Allen. Coach Allen began his lifetime commitment to wrestling some 50 years ago at St. Benedict's Prep School. Coach Allen coached 30 individual champions and 7 national prep champions, the foremost being Mike Caruso, who recorded an 81 wins to 0 loss high school record before earning 3 NCAA championships at Lehigh University. John is an exceptional individual. He has devoted his life in working with young people through athletics, teaching the skills and attitudes fundamental for success in sports, but more importantly, teaching his wrestlers how to win with humility and lose with grace and dignity. Coach Allen has always enjoyed the reputation of being a gentleman coach who brought credit to his profession, teams, schools, community, and family. And now, here is Coach Allen, who will instruct us on skills.
Standard 2 upper arms tie-up, where you're over top the near arm and underneath the further arm. And to keep him on his back, you want to brace against the bridge, so you want to post the knee or post the foot. One or the other gets posted so that the man can't bridge hard and unload you, that is, toss you off his own chest. You also want to keep your head down to block his further arm from slipping around and under your head and or under your head so that he could rotate in. The near arm, if you keep your elbow against his arm, he can't slip a hand through an opening to release himself on the near side. So he's pretty much trapped. It's just a standard 2 upper arms tie-up. It does really trap a man, provided you can balance against the bridge and control the rotations. Now, picking up on the near arm keeps him from rotating inward. Pulling in on the further arm keeps him from rotating outward. So you control his rotations with your 2 arm grips. Now, suppose he does somehow slip his hand past your head. As his hand comes past, you can still keep him on his back by maintaining the pure far arm grip that you have on his right arm. If, on the other hand, he rotates far enough off his back that you sense he's going to get off unless you change, your change-off move is to release that far arm and go for a half Nelson. Now, once he senses he's trapped by the half, he'll probably try to rotate the opposite way, outward, and you have to release the half and change to a reverse Nelson, reverse half Nelson. And when you do so, you bring your head up and you let your hips sag so that you don't go over against a strong rotation. Now, if he starts to bring his hand starts to come back inward toward you, bringing his hand not up by your head, but down near his own waist, he might be able to squirm off his back, but again, you want to prevent him from doing so. So with your right hand, in this case, your right hand, you would reach down and grab his wrist, push it away from you, so that you can thrust your hand underneath his arm and get 2 upper arms tied up again. If he now decides he's going to turn outward again, and he takes his other hand and somehow gets it under your body and starts to bring that through down near his waistline, you try before he gets too far to reach under your own body and grab his wrist, bring it back out toward his shoulder area, past, and move your knee in tight to him so that he can no longer slip a hand down near his waist, and you change back to 2 upper arms. So this is just one sample situation where a variety of different things can be done to keep the man on his back and not let him rotate away from trouble. We're going to cover some boots pins, some pins that stem from some sort of a leg ride or leg attachment to opponent. And the first one we'll talk about is Crucifix. And we'll talk in terms of the prime times which you can apply Crucifix. Number 1, if opponent is kneeling and you want to insert a grate against him, but you fail to block his near arm, and as you go to insert the grate, he might reach inside, probably will, and grab your leg, you can place a figure 4 scissors on his near underhooking arm. And then reach over and secure a far bar Nelson. As you apply that bar Nelson, which is simply a lead up to a half Nelson, once you get the half Nelson, start to use it to crank him over toward his back, and then greatly immobilize his upper body by making the scissors on his arm tight, straight scissors, and by using both your arms to fully control opponent's other arm as you rotate to a prone position and thereby stack him somewhat in crucifix pose. So one way of getting him into a crucifix is if he happens to grab your leg from inside crotch as you go to insert a grapevine. Another opportunity might be if you are in a hover position, perpendicular to your opponent, and you decide you want to get him in a crucifix. And instead of waiting for him to reach inside to grab your leg, you simply use your leg to hook his arm. And then figure 4 his arm, and again put in a far half Nelson. Now you can get the far half Nelson via a bar Nelson, or simply by pushing his head away and applying the half Nelson. And then again, you put a straight scissors on one arm and put a double wrap on the other and try to get to your stomach into a prone pose so that he can't kick over your body and get you in Granby pin grip. A third prime time might be executed versus a wrist leg roll. If opponent is about to start into a wrist leg roll, just as he begins his far roll action, you do a little high leg over with your tied leg, and then you switch hips and sit through, and thereby you begin to trap him. And you have to have the strength to break his grip on your wrist and get a Nelson in on the far side, or at least be able to control him, not have him control you on that side. Then you gradually work your way into crucifix position. If he has you in what we call Granby pin grip, he has you in a Granby pin grip, and he's looking for the complete pin grip, that is, he gets your wrist with his other hand and starts up for your head. If you can get your arm inside, you can start to bring him across your body and go after crucifix as a follow-up. So one more time, the little series of prime times. If you are inserting a near grape but have failed to block his near arm, and he grabs the leg from inside, you can change into a figure 4 on his arm, apply a far bar Nelson, get the half Nelson that stems from that bar Nelson, crank him toward his back, put a straight scissors on his arm, double wrap his other arm, get prone so he can't kick over and get you in a pin grip of his own, and you've got him trapped. The second one, you're in hover position, and you don't wait for him to grab your leg. You hook his arm with your leg and put a figure 4 on his arm. Push his head away. Instead of getting the bar Nelson, push his head away, apply a far half Nelson, and eventuate into crucifix. A third opportunity might arise if you are in wrist leg roll grip, that is, he has it on you, and he starts into the far wrist leg roll. As he begins his roll, you do a little high leg over with the tied leg, then you kind of switch hips and sit through, and then start to trap him on his back in crucifix position. And a fourth possible time that you could get him on his back with crucifix would be if he has you in what we call Granby pin grip, and he would like to have the complete Granby pin grip, that is, have your wrist with one hand, his other hand so-called, and he's going for your head. As he comes up for the head, you can slip your arm inside his arm and start to bring him over toward his back. And it is possible you might be able to change off to a crucifix pin grip. So those are some of the times when a crucifix might be affected and might be effective. All right, the next boot pin is double grape, which is about as good as it gets for pinning a man. The tacit rule with double grapevine is that you don't tend to go up into the straddle position if you already have opponent trapped on his back and don't need double grape to finish the job. That is, stay basic, don't get fancy. The bad feature of climbing up into position for double grape is that the climbing often enables opponent to rotate off his back before the feet can be positioned to trap him. When you're applying a double grape, you try not to get too far up toward opponent's head. That is, you slide back toward his feet if need be, so as to attain a near chest-to-chest relationship, so that opponent cannot easily unload you by either bridging and rotating or by boosting you past and slipping out the back door, that is, down through your legs. Now we're going to demonstrate double grape using several of the many prime times when a double grape could be applied. One example would be if a man is attempting a barrel roll, but he does not have a sufficiently tight grip on your upper arm, and yet he's still determined to go down to his hip and start into a barrel. If you can maintain your balance and not go over and circle toward his legs, you can trap him. You can trap him with the double grapevine counter to an attempted barrel roll. The second opportunity, again, it's not something that's going to crop up often as a possible movement, especially because we don't want to see a wrestler in this position. But if an opponent gets in on a double and somehow sits you on your duck, and you have an overhook on one side and an underhook on the other, what you might be able to do is kick his leg out, his knee out, and his push on it on the side on which you have the overhook. Use your other foot to elevate him, and use your underhook to rotate him, and then just come right up into a double grape position. A third moment when a double grape might be effectively applied would be if he's in on a deep double and his tendency is to raise up too much to complete his double. As he raises up, you can walk forward and straddle him and lower yourself down into a double grape position. Another time when double grape might be applicable is if opponent has what we call a double drag grip on your arm. All right, the manner in which this double drag grip is attained is this. The man that is with an underhook has the wrist on the other side as well, and the man that's tied up in the underhook would like to get out of it. So he'll bring his arm across, the wrist of that arm across. He'll grab upper arm, roll his wrist free, and now he's got double drag grip. Well, the man that's in double drag grip can now counter that grip by using what we call a Polish throw. He just turns and does a shoulder throw as he goes toward his knees. Once he brings the man over, he does a double cling to that arm and steps across into double grape position. So the natural follow-up to the Polish throw is a double grape. Another opportunity for double grape is if the man is in on a double leg drop, or more a duck under actually. He's in a duck under position, and he's raising his head way up, and we do a PB, a lat grab and a tricep grab and pancake action. We PB him down to his backside, and from there we do a delayed double grape. This is certainly a moment when if you step up into the double grape just after you pancake him with the PB, he'll rotate through, and you'll go over and under. So it's a delayed double grape that you insert. Still another opportunity for double grape. This other opportunity would occur, again, similar to the prior one, as a counter to a counter. And in this case, we're top man. We have a grape on. We have an underhook on the far arm. The opponent is going to be countering this position he's in, this grip that he's in, by bringing his tied arm across in front of him, grabbing our wrist with his other hand, sitting through away from us, or in toward us actually, and then he grabs the wrist with his other hand, and then as he does his backstroke to get out of the position he's in and come up on top, he carelessly failed to pinch with his knees our leg. and thus our leg was free to step across them into a double grape position. Which are only a sample set, represent a sample set of the many prime times for double grape. We'll do a parallel lift over, counter to double grape, to leg lift, I should say. A parallel lift over, counter to leg lift, and we'll hold the chin as we go over and complete the move with the double grape grip. We lift them over and come right up into a double grape. Now we're going to stay in that position for a moment so that some points can be made with regards to the double grape. When you're in the double grape position, you've got to be sure to brace yourself and trap opponent. Don't let him rotate free. Either entwine your legs with his legs or scissor your legs together and squeeze. If you entwine your legs, you press outward with your insteps and spread opponent's feet sufficiently wide so that his lower legs serve as braces against his rotation, while the pressure applied to the spreading of his legs also acts as a deterrent. If you scissor your legs together and squeeze, that will lock his hips in place and thereby prevent his rotation. Squeeze by pressing your knees into his hips while drawing your heels up in the air. Now, if you happen to have the chin grip, and you won't always have it when you do a double grape, but if you have the chin grip, pulling his chin down toward the mat prevents him from rotating in toward your body. And his rotating away from your body is made especially difficult because you're hanging off to the other side. So your body hanging off to one side prevents rotation in one direction. The chin grip and the turning of his chin down toward the mat with that grip prevents him from rotating in the other direction. And with his feet kind of spread apart, his own lower legs acting as braces against rotation, a man in this particular type of double grape where the chin grip is a part of it is really trapped, both down below and up top regarding his body as a whole. We're going to demonstrate guillotine, or twitcher, as it's also known. And to secure this pin grip, we're going to insert a leg grape. We've already got it inserted, actually. And we pick up on the far instep. We say ankle, but it should be instep. And we pick up on it just enough to shift weight onto the opponent's hand so he can't do any quick sit-throughs or anything to counter our grapevine. And instead of underhooking the forearm, we're going to go inside it and pop the wrist out to the side and pick up a little more on that instep and break him down toward his stomach. Once he's broken down, we're going to reach across and grab the wrist and work our elbow underneath. After climbing a little bit, we come up into a straddle position on him. And then we work our elbow underneath, our head underneath, and we walk our fingers around his head and bring him over toward his back, pushing off with our free hand. And once we've got him on his back, we'll push on the near hip a little bit, shift our hips out from under him a little bit, and then eventually lock around the top of his head, not the neck. We go to the extremity for additional leverage. And to reinforce our grape, if we care to or sense the need, we can put a scissors on our own legs, that is, scissor our own legs together, and with our overfoot, we place that instep of it underneath the leg of opponent, and we have him trapped on his back in what's called a guillotine or a twitcher. Now, if he happens to somehow get his leg free from the grapevine and starts to rotate out, as he rotates out, we can come to our knees and change to what we call a double bar lockup. We go under the neck and under the back and lock our fingers in front of the far shoulder. And we stay on our knees and just press down with our chin. And although difficult to get a pin from this grip, we do have him still trapped on his back, and we'll certainly get the near fall points that we desire from this if we didn't get them from the guillotine itself. Now we're going to do the entire series of movements again. We've got a grapevine in. And we picked up on the far instep to shift weight to his hands. And we're going to pop out on that far wrist. We've already popped out on that far wrist and picked up on that instep into his stomach. Once opponent is prone, we come up and straddle him a little bit, get his wrist in one hand, walk our fingers of the other hand around his head, push off as is necessary sometimes with the free hand to rotate ourselves over to the back. Make sure we don't pin ourselves. It isn't that uncommon for somebody who has the guillotine on somebody else to pin himself and not even realize that he has until the referee raises the hand of the opponent. So you want to make sure you don't pin yourself. And then once we've got him on his back, we can then lock around the top of his head, take a finger clasp around the top of his head, and if we sense a need, we can change to a reinforced grapevine by scissoring our own two legs together and then placing one of our insteps underneath his lower leg. Now previously, his leg came free and he rotated out and we placed him in a double bar lockup. This time, let's say his leg comes free and he starts to rotate in, which is the more likely, then you change to two upper arms, standard two upper arms tie-up. So no matter what, you're always ready to go to your next move to trap the opponent and keep him on his back where he belongs. Now what was just demonstrated is not really the common method that most use for going for a guillotine. The common method, most frequently used by most people, it seems, is that they'll get a far underhook and then try to get the wrist of that arm. And once they've got that wrist, they'll duck their head under that arm and then lean back and try to get the head of the opponent so that they can bring him over into a guillotine position. It looks simple and easy when demonstrated slowly, but in competition, more often than not, I would say perhaps 9 out of 10 times, as the head goes under the arm and the lean back begins to occur so that the reverse Nelson type grip can be accomplished, achieved, the referee will jump in and yell potentially dangerous, blow it dead as a movement, and you have not accomplished anything. So we tend to break the man down to a prone position before working our head under the arm and walking our fingers around the head. All right, Jacobson pin. Now, Jacobson might be the best of all the leg ride pins, not as compared with double grape, but as compared with guillotine and spread eagle and such, because more frequently you can get the Jacob applied, and probably more frequently you'll get near 4 points from it. Though the position for Jake application can be acquired by inserting a grape versus a kneeling opponent, and then using a whirl-around technique to take opponent off his base, to place him on his hip or butt where he'll be vulnerable, Jake seems better and easier applied when circumstance rather than design causes its application. If ever you have a grape in, or can get a grape in when opponent is on or near to being on his hip, you always want to consider the use of Jake. Now, Jake can also be procured other than from just the direct insert of a leg grape. It can be procured Russian style via a leg hook. If opponent happens to be prone, and this would be more likely done in freestyle, but if opponent happens to be prone and you have his leg hooked, you press down on his head and neck with one hand. At the same time, you reach back and get the instep of the hook leg, and then you work your way into him and over him to tilt his lower body so that you can insert a grape. As you release the foot, you can let your foot slip into a grape position. So that'd be a second method for getting the grapevine in and be in a position to apply Jake action. Now once you have the grape in, since you had it turned a little bit toward his hip already, you're in a position to perhaps take him the rest of the route. And what we're going to do this time is we'll take, instead of the head, we'll take an overhook grip on his arm We put our hand on his lat, try to work his elbow up on our lat, and once we have such a grip, this overhook grip that we're describing and filming, what we want to do now with this tight grip is work our elbow down alongside the opponent's ear to press his shoulders down toward the mat. If we're up on our knees and he's up on his knees and we have the Grapevine, we don't want to lose our balance. We don't want to fall to a hip on either side of him. If he comes in toward us, we want to bring our free leg way around and use the foot as a post so that we don't fall to our hip. If somehow he manages to rotate in toward us before we can get that foot around as a brace and we fall to our hips are now under his. That's not good when you're a leg rider. You want your hips higher than the opponent's in general. So what we would tend to do is try to get our hips back up on top by applying a cross face, bringing them across our body, and now go right into a position where we could apply the Jake. We're in position where we've got him. If we're in a position where we're down on that hip, bring them back across, we're down on our hip, and we apply the cross face, and we want to bring him across our body, but he won't go. Then what we'll do is apply a beginning of reverse cross face. We'll take our upper arm, put it on the other side of his head, make a fist, reach down toward his butt, and pull ourselves up on top. That is, climb on top of him. And again, once on top, that is, once our hips are on top, we'd be looking to complete the Jake. Now, when you have a Jake in, and we need a better camera angle here to indicate this, once the Jake is in, we want to see if we can't keep our knee of our tied leg, the one that we've got draped on the opponent's leg, which is the one that's, his leg is the one that's really tied up. We try to keep that knee of our grape leg straddling his body, just in the event he would try to scoot his hips out from under. If he tries to scoot his hips out from under, then we could go right into a double grape. We're in perfect position to change off to a double grape, which is even better than the Jacobson. Also, when we have the Jake in, what we want to do is not only keep our leg straddling his body, his midsection, but we try to bring our heels up in the air. That makes it more difficult for the opponent to rotate in toward us. For example, now if we had the head and we had folded toward our hip, toward our outside hip, in an effort to bow him a little bit to get the near fall points that we need, if we don't have our heels in the air, his rotating up into us wouldn't be so difficult. But if we bring heels up in the air, that simple little technique makes it much more difficult for the opponent to come into us. So we don't want to go to our hip on either side. We'll once again indicate what we would do if he tried to come toward us and bring us down under, get us to fold to a hip. We've got the Grapevine. We're looking for the Jake, and he comes into us, and we fail to brace with our foot. We would cross face and bring him across and climb just enough to get near fall position started. If we can't bring the cross face in that manner, we'll apply a reverse cross face technique with the upper part of our arm, make a fist, put it down in his rear crotch area, and then pull ourselves up on top. That is, climb up on top. Once up on top, we would seek to get the Jake and bring him to his back. Now, if he's on his knees and we're doing a whirl around technique, we don't want to fall to our hip. We post the knee and we post the hand. We only go toward that outside hip if our effort is to bow him in a desperate attempt to get him onto his back where we can get some near fall points. But even then, when we fold toward our outside hip, we're very conscious that the opponent would like to come into us even more than he already has, and so we must bring our feet in the air with the the soles of our feet, the edges of the soles of our feet touching. And the more we bring our feet up in the air toward our own butt area, the more difficult it is for the man underneath to try to rotate into us and get off his back, and maybe reverse us even. Also, we want to realize that the straddling of his body trunk by keeping our knee across his body keeps us well positioned if we care to change off to a double grip. Now, to pin it, or to at least get near full, some of the grips up top. You can grab the head, you can wrap around the head, you can also overhook the arm, put hand on his lat, get his elbow up on your lat. You can also get cross-face type action. That is, you reach across and get his... Now with the cross-face grip, though it's not the best of the grips possible up top, you can pull on that arm that little bit you need to rotate him sufficiently to get past the right angle with his shoulders so that the referee starts to count off for some near fall points. But as an alternative, you want to get behind the arm and get a pure forearm grip, which offers a little bit better torque for rotating him toward his back and enabling you to get near fall points from the referee. So up top, you could have cross face, you could have forearm, you could have head, or you could have a tight overhook grip. Those are your basic grips with the Jacobson. And Jacobson is a very potent grip for gaining near fall points. Difficult to pin with, but very, very easy to get near fall points with. All right, spread eagle, split scissors is our next topic. Unless very adept at spread eagle, attempts at its application amount to a waste of time. And pitiful, poor, desperate attempts at the end of a bout are a particular waste. So it's only for those who are adept at the doing. Also to keep in mind, be careful you don't pin yourself in an effort to pin opponent with spread eagle. If you were to do so, you would not be the first to have done so. Now, spread eagle itself. One ideal way to get it, but very difficult to actually execute, is if opponent were in sit-out and you had a double underhook from the rear, you could use one of your underhooks, the elbow of your arm, to raise his arm up in the air so you could come to the side and insert a grate. And then you would lower yourself, get down low to the mat, and go across his back and hook his other knee from over top. And then you bring your free leg knee into his butt so that you can roll him up across your body and into a stack type position. And you couldn't get a better spread eagle type grip. So one method is versus a sit out, but it's very difficult to actually execute in competition. The second method, for those that have the ability, is if you have a grape in, and as you insert it, you get high up on his upper back so that his head is forced downward. You've got a lot of weight up top so that his head goes down toward the mat. You'd have the far ankle, reach in and lock, not lock, but reach in and grab your own wrist so that you now have his far leg controlled by your two arms. And then you try to bring him straight up over the top of his head without breaking his neck in the process. And again, you'd have him pretty good position, stack up wise, with the split scissors, the spread eagle grip. So if you can get a grape in, and as you insert the grape, you get high up on his upper back so as to put pressure on that area and force his head downward into a post position on the mat, perhaps could bring him over top his head, that is, flip him, and get him into a into a spread eagle pin grip. We will demonstrate that one more time. We've got the grape in. We've managed to get our upper body pretty high on his upper back so as to force his head down. We reach down with our free hand, with our outside hand, our trail hand, and get his instep. With our other hand, we go inside crotch and grab our own wrist. And now we force his head down by leaning up toward that head and pick him straight up over the top and put him on his back. And again, you have to be careful. You don't pin yourself. You must keep your own shoulders clear of the mat, or at least one of them. A third method for getting opponent over with spread eagle. We've got a grape in. We've managed to get a hold of the far instep, far ankle. We grab that instep with our other hand as well. So we've got two hands on his instep. We pull that foot up toward his butt. At that juncture, we overhook his far leg with our trail arm. We just do an overhook movement. Release with our other hand, reach under, and lock fingers so that we've got his leg well tied up. We drive him down into a prone position and then start to crank him over toward his back by sweeping his tied foot away and leaning off to the side. We crank him over, and again, you must be ready to post with your free foot, even bridge if you have to ensure that at least one of your shoulders remains clear of the mat as you're bringing the opponent's shoulders down to the mat. One more time from a different angle. We've got the grape in. We reach down and get the instep. We reach with our other hand and get the instep with another hand. We've got two hands on that far instep. We pull that foot of opponent's up into his butt, overhook his far leg. Now reach under from front crotch and lock our fingers. And then as we drive him down into a prone position, we start to sweep his leg away and crank him over onto his back in as much of a stacked position as we can get. Still one more time from another direction, facing away. We've got the grape. We've got the far instep. We get that instep with a second hand. We overhook that leg. We reach under, lock our fingers, sweep his leg away as we lean off to the side and crank him over into a near fall position and perhaps get the pin itself. All right, we're going to demonstrate stretcher scissors and three-quarter stretcher scissors. Now, in honesty, we don't, through the years, haven't actually taught stretcher scissors. We have taught three-quarter stretcher. Stretcher scissors, we're just going to walk into the position. We always demonstrate the counters to it, not at this moment, but we do tend to demonstrate the counters to it because other teams will use it against us. But essentially, what we have here is each of our feet are inside the front groin area, and now our toes are going to turn outward, and we're going to pop the arms from the rear and break the man down so that we've got him in what we call a full stretcher position. And we want our feet inside as they are, toes pointed outward, ideally toes hooking onto his legs that little bit that they can. And now from here, the basic move is you would apply a bar Nelson so that from it you could then obtain a half Nelson. Once you get the half Nelson, you can clear your legs, get off to the side, and finish the half Nelson, and rotate him to his back and try to pin him. So that's the essence of what a stretcher scissors entails and what the most common follow-up would be. Now, three-quarter stretcher, which we have on film already, but we'll re-demonstrate at this point. We get the grape, we get a grapevine in, and we take the foot of our free leg and put it inside his far ankle. And from here, we would press out on that foot a little bit continuously throughout the move, turn our upper body so that we're parallel to the opponent, at least upper body-wise, pop his arms out to the front, get him down in a prone position, continue to press out with our free foot slightly, apply a bar Nelson while doing so. insert the half Nelson and gradually crank him over toward his back. You have to get out from under him a little bit as he goes over. You don't want to go under. You got to make sure you don't go under. And the best you'll get out of it is near fall. And you might be lucky to get that for the fact the referee might jump in and protect him from harm, the opponent, by stopping the bout at that point and allowing him to start fresh in a referee's position. So 3/4 stretcher, like full stretcher, leads to bar Nelson, which leads to half Nelson. With the 3/4 stretcher, however, we don't clear our legs and get off him and drive him over to his back, because one of our legs is draped in there pretty tight. We just have to take the half Nelson and gradually ease him over into a near fall position so we can get at least some points from our effort. All right, we're going to demonstrate and talk about Turk. Turk's significance lies not only in the fact that if administered by an adept individual, it acts like slow poison, which is its nickname, but also in that there are many prime times when or where it can be effectively and wisely applied. Now we'll come back later and show a good number of the prime times, not all, but at the outset here we'll address the elements of execution of Turk. From alongside your opponent, you use one hand to secure a hook grip on his near knee, and then you lift out and up on that knee, sort of along an arc along an arc motion. And at that point, once you get the leg lifted just high enough that you can step in, and watch your balance as you do so, you step in and try to get your heel as high up the opponent's hamstring as possible, tilting your lower leg in a proper manner, not toward his feet, but up more toward his head. Once you get that far leg hooked, the heel on the hamstring, then you proceed to move your upper body forward into in a cross-body position. Now to complete the Turk, there are various ways. You could take what we call a reverse whizzer grip on his arm, and you would then place your hand on his lat while trying to get his elbow up on your back. And at that juncture, you'll be able to press his shoulders to the mat simply by bringing your elbow down alongside his ear. When your elbow is adjacent to his ear, it pretty much puts his shoulder flat against the mat. Now another follow-up to the Turk itself, instead of getting the reverse whizzer grip, you can underhook the opponent's collar, his neck, underhook his free knee, place your two hands on the mat, and then walk your fingers toward one another until you're able to clasp fingers. We call this terrible Turk because it bends his body in such a manner that it creates a little pain. Another possible follow-up is ideal reverse cradle. If in the event the Turk loosens or it never was tight enough to begin with, what might be applied is an ideal RC, that is an RC on the lower leg. You would simply change off to the RC and then unhook his leg and finish. Jake, though a rare but possible change off we'll demonstrate next, if opponent happens to rotate away, he turns away, then you could change off to a Jake. You would either take the head as you grapevine his leg, or you could take an arm, either arm, cross-face style or a far arm, where you're behind one of the two arms and reaching across to get the other upper arm. So a change-off can be made from Turk to Jake. So one more time with the application of Turk. You would scoop the near knee with your hand, using your hand as if it were a hook. Take that knee in and up along an arc, and then step in such a manner that your lower leg is tilted up toward his head area and your heel attaches to his hamstring. Once the leg is secured with the hook of it, the scoop of it, then you can proceed forward into a cross-body position. If a Turk is to afford real and lasting control, it has to be secured very high on opponent's leg. Now, if you care to, at this point, once the Turk has been fully secured, you can figure four your own legs in order to tighten the grip on his upper leg. As mentioned earlier, Turk's significance lies not only in the fact that if administered well by somebody that's capable, it acts like slow poison, its nickname, but also in that there are many prime times when it can be effectively applied. And we're about to demonstrate several of the prime times. One, if you're in a sprawl position when an opponent has come in for a single head in, and he happens to make the ill-advised move of stepping up with his trail leg, you can reach over top, grab a knee, dump him to his hip, let his head slip past in front of your gut, and then step in for the Turk, and you'll have him in bad position. Besides delayed bypass, it can be done via a body lift. For example, and we'll give two examples, via a far duck. If you have an underhook and your opponent has wrist and you crank him a little bit with your underhook and he comes toward you to face you, he circles to face you, you can get into a far duck under action, but you don't go to your knees. You get into a deep squat, wrap deeply around the waist, wrap deep into the crotch area, lift them and do a flying Turk. Another example of a flying Turk is what we call Fujita, named after the man that did it very successfully in national competition. If an opponent stands and you have the attitude to wrap deep around the waist and deep through the rear crotch, you can position yourself to squat, squeeze, pop your hips, and lift them, and do a flying Turk, which we call Fujita. Another example of a moment when you can get Turk would be via a snapback when an opponent is in sit-out. Sometimes, when you snap him flat and he rotates off his back with his hand close to his body, he'll rotate to his knees, and you can circle around his head, keep pressuring down to keep his head posted or near to posted, and you can lift the near knee and apply Turk action. Turk can also be gained via a reverse cradle as an aid in the completion of the reverse cradle, but more likely as a change-off if opponent happens to attack single head out and gets a good grip on your leg. Trying to continue on with the reverse cradle might get you in trouble. So what you do is you unlock, scoop that near knee with your hand, step in for the Turk, and get him on his back via Turk instead of via the reverse cradle. You can also get Turk via Jake. Just as Jake can be gotten from Turk, Turk can be gotten from Jake. If you have a Jacobson pin grip on the opponent and somehow he manages to rotate in or you allow him to rotate in, you can change by pivoting your upper body. You can change to a Turk grip on him instead of staying with the Jacobson. Applied in competition. Crab ride. Used purely as a long-term control method, crab ride is technically a stall and therefore illegal. Hence, crab ride must be used as a pin lead-up in and of itself, or it must serve as a preliminary item for some other ride or grip, which hopefully will lead toward a pin. As a pin lead-up, some considerations are the following. For example, deep waist wrap and tight bar might be secured while you have a crab ride. This would be not for everybody, but for some few that would happen to be waist ride, tight bar type people. So if you get a deep waist wrap and a tight bar and use your foot to elevate the opponent out of the sit position, you can then run the head and complete the tight bar. Another example of a follow-up from crab ride that'll put a man on his back is wrist bar and half Nelson. You get a one-on-one on the one side, get a half Nelson on the other, and then again use a foot to elevate the opponent, post your head, step across him, and finish him off with wrist bar and half. Still another pin-type completion of crab ride. If the opponent happens to post both hands, you can underhook his arms just slightly above the elbow and then sweep them backward, elevate them up into a tuck position, and then do a sit-through, and you have them in what we describe as screamer pin grip. Another way to get them in screamer would be if you have a wrist bar and half Nelson grip, and you go to elevate them, such as we did earlier, but this time the opponent attempts to slip the half Nelson, which would be difficult for him to complete because you have his wrist tied up on the other side. But if you were to attempt to do it, instead of continuing to elevate him with the foot you've been elevating him with, you elevate him with the other foot and elevate him across your body in a diagonal direction to get him into a stack or tuck position. Then you sit through and get the screamer grip on. Still another way to get him on his back from crab ride, perhaps, is if you have him in crab ride, you can change to a Jacobson. You lift the one arm up slightly so you can insert the jake, that is the grapevine part of the jake, and then once you get your leg inserted, you start to bring your hips up on top, and then go after a Jacobson completion. Or once you get up on top in that same position, instead of going for the Jacobson, you could go for three-quarter stretcher. You could pop his arms out to the front and then apply a bar Nelson and lift at the elbow, get the half Nelson in, and slowly rotate him toward his back and at least get near 4 points. All right, one more time, that series of movements from crab ride. We'll have a deep waist strap and a tight bar, and we'll elevate them from the sitting position to a prone position, and then run the tight bar.
John, I just want to...
The second one that was done earlier, and will be done again now, wrist bar and a half via crab ride. You get a one-on-one, good wrist grip, get a half Nelson, use a foot to elevate them, post your own head, step across them, finish them off with wrist bar and half. If he's in a sit position, you have him in crab ride, and you post both hands. You can do a double underhook, sweep back on the arms, elevate him up into a tuck position, and sit through, and get him in what we call screamer pin grip. Still another way to get him in screamer, as illustrated earlier, and now again, you have wrist bar in half when he's in position, and you start to elevate him as earlier, wanting to get him in the wrist bar in half, but he begins to do a slip and a half action against you. You elevate him in the opposite direction, diagonally across your body into a tuck position if at all possible, and get him in the screamer pin grip. And then finally, if you have him in crab ride and would care to change off to a grapevine, it is possible, and you could then get your hips on top and apply either a Jacobson or a three-quarter stretcher. Either one is applicable once you get your hips on top after coming from crab ride to grapevine. Leg hook ride. Leg hook ride, like crab ride, in and of itself is not a pin grip, but it can be and should be a control method which leads up to some pin grip, chosen either by yourself or dictated by opponent's reaction to the leg hook or reaction to your selection from leg hook. Some pin grip considerations via leg hook are as follows. Number one, three-quarter Nelson. The opponent bows his head or posts his head, a 3/4 could be applied. If an attempt is made at 3/4, perhaps Guillotine 3/4, that is a change off from 3/4, could be applied. If opponent lunges out to his stomach, do a little high leg over, get under his leg, run it to the front, get him in a tuck position, got him on his back, and it all started with leg hook. Another example of a pin follow-up from leg hook would be what we call arm angle to bucky pin, hip underarm prise. You attack his near arm with both of your arms and your shoulder and try to sprawl him out to his gut. Get him prone, and then you'd reach across his body and get the one-on-one on the far side and run the bucky coming all the way around and get him on his back. It's also possible, perhaps particularly in freestyle, where opponent is less active on the bottom, to do what we call shiosha, where you attack that near arm, get the arm angle going, and then you, with the underhook, do craw action across his body and eventually work your head free and get two upper arms, standard two upper arms tie-up. That's what we call shiosha, craw action, get him on his back. Also from leg hook, you could wrap, other than around the waist, you could wrap around the near hamstring and get fishhook grip, that is near fishhook grip, and all the possible moves from that near fishhook grip could be applied once you get it. If you have a leg hook and you happen to loop the opponent's near arm, he might attempt an inside drag action to counter the leg hook, but if you put arm across body and hand under armpit, you'll then find that you'll be able to reach down under his leg and get fishhook on his wrist. Very commonly you'll be able to do that. And then again, you've got all the different follow-up moves from near fishhook that could be applied. If you have leg hook, you might sense that he's got his near arm pretty straight while his hand is posted, so you could change to wrist back series. By that I mean you slide your hand down, get the wrist, head in the armpit, drive with your head, pull with your hand, stretch him out, sprawl him out, and then you've got your Sullivan, your Mills, your whip over, your bucky, all the different moves from wrist back could be applied. So leg hook could act as a start, a preliminary move to gaining wrist back position. Navy. If you have a leg hook, you circle the near foot, the leg you've got hooked, you circle that foot toward you, you push on the near arm so he can't pivot in toward you. If he steps up, try to get up into a stand-up, what you can do is come backward into Navy ride position. And then all the moves that can be worked from Navy ride that lead to pin grips could be applied. If as you take him back toward Navy, he makes the critical mistake of rotating inward toward you, what you can apply is ideal Arcia. As he rotates in, you wrap on the near leg, get the collar, lock hands, and you have him in ideal Arcia. And it all started from a simple leg hook. If he is stepping up on his outside foot and you have a leg hook, you can shift your body diagonally across his body up onto him so that you can wrap it collar and knee rather than shoulder and hamstring and do a rollover cradle. If you happen to have a leg hook, an opponent either prior to your grabbing his ankle or after you're grabbing his ankle happens to put a whizzer in, you can hold that ankle just long enough to get your deep false half in after you've unhooked his leg, and you can put him on his back with a deep false half, far underhook. You also can apply pin grips that come from boots by getting a boot in, that is a grapevine in, via the leg hook. To get the grapevine, what you do is you circle the foot toward you, to take pressure off his knee, which you're hurting a little bit. He'll have a tendency to stretch his leg. When he does that, you lunge up onto him and slip a grapevine in on the near side. And then you've got all the moves, the pin grips that follow from a near grapevine. And still one more opportunity to get boots in via a leg hook being a boot in a sense, but I'm talking really about some sort of a grapevine normally when I say boot. If an opponent attempts a back switch action against your loop of the near arm, he starts to sit through. As he sits through, you can whip a leg across him and apply double grape to put him in real jeopardy. In fact, you'll probably get the pin in double grape. Now we have several other items that are already on film that we're not going to redo because of time constraints. For example, cheap tilts, assorted cheap tilts are on film on another day. Cradles of all sorts are already on film, as are Nelsons of all sorts and wrist bar and half series. So even though those topics crop up on Saturdays at moments, they're already on film and we're not going to redo them. The next two movements that we will do are snowplow and Japanese key lock. Now, snowplow is saved for special occasions, and on snowplow you start off the referee's whistle, come perpendicular and get cross face and far ankle. You're like the truck, he's like that plow in front. What you start to do is drive forward. When he resists by tilting his hip into you to block the drive, you then release with both hands and then hook his arm with the one hand, hook under his waist with the other hand, sit through toward the front and whip him over your body, and you stay with what you have until you sense there's a need to change off, and the change off would be to inverted reverse headlock. One more time from a different angle. You're in referee's position, and on the referee's whistle, ideally, you come perpendicular and you get far ankle and cross face. You drive into him as if you were the truck and he were the plow. To stop your drive, he would tend to tilt his near hip into you. The moment he does that, he leaves himself vulnerable to a whip over. And so you release both hands, hook his arm with the one hand, hook deep under his waist with the other hand, sit through toward the front and do a whip over, and then tighten up on your grip and change off to an inverted reverse headlock only if you sense the need and the purpose. The Japanese key lock is illegal, but we show it anyway as an annual event, and we'll have it on film. If a man is in sit-out and you have a double underhook, you release with the arm away from the side your head's on, and the rest is left to the details described in the film itself without words attached. Again, from a slightly different angle, you release the one underhook and begin to overlap his arm, and then you sit and get him in a lot of pain until he wishes his shoulders to be down. All right, though we have shown several pins and pin lead-ups here on this Saturday film, Saturday to us is mainly to concern ourselves with counters and blocks to various moves. For example, to start with, working against ankle right. Now, the opponent can go for far ankle or he can go for near ankle. Number one, you want to control the opponent's wrist. If you can get a wrist, it makes it tough for him to apply ankle ride on either side. So on the ref's whistle, if he's going for a far ankle, what you might do is catch his wrist in mid-flight, or to slow down that hand that's going to your far ankle, you bring your elbow back to your rib cage and catch his forearm to slow down his process. and then ultimately change to a wrist grab. And once you get the wrist, you lock your elbow, post your foot by stepping forward, and then come all the way up into a stand-up and continue to work your way free. If when you get a hold of that wrist, after stretching your target leg, and that I should have mentioned earlier, as you bind his arm and then ultimately get his wrist, you try to stretch the target leg so there's not an ankle there within reach to him. If he attempts to bring his arm back up to the waist, one thing you can do is release on his wrist and change off to a switch. He'd be vulnerable to a switch. Or if he brings his arm back up toward the waist and you can't stop it from happening, or you care to allow it to happen, and he reaches in and gets counter wrist grip, you can immediately go into far roll action and change to a slip and a half, hip hoist, and you'll catch him on his back. Also against ankle rides, sitting out, sitting back, and doing swisher type stand-up are good. You can sit out, you can sit back into him, or you can do a swisher stand-up. All right, now if opponent goes for a far ankle, as we're doing an inside leg stand-up, that is inside foot to outside hand, we have to immediately, realizing he's gone for that ankle, pivot extra weight onto that foot so he can't lift that foot. And then we work our way free once we get into a position where he can't do anything. So pivoting weight onto the outside foot becomes critical when you're doing an inside leg stand-up against an attempted far ankle waist. Now, if he happens to be going for near ankle as you're doing an inside leg stand-up, you should have already tilted your lower leg to let it slip through so he can't get a hold of that ankle. And then you come on up into the stand-up and work your way free. One more time, pivoting weight onto the outside foot, and one more time, slipping that lower leg through. Here we have far ankle being attempted. We pivot weight onto the outside foot. Here we have near ankle being attempted. We sit that leg through and then come on up into a stand-up, and don't let him get us. We get the neutral point. And then one last thing to mention here against the far ankle ride is if opponent goes for far ankle ride and waist, inside switch becomes possible, but it's not the best reaction because it often leaves you vulnerable to certain pin lead-ups. But you can sit through to the inside and go after a switch on that inside. If he does not have a real good grip on the ankle, you'll be able to whip your legs through and your hips through and secure a reversal via an inside switch. All right, we're going to skip past back. All right, we're going to somewhat skip over back hook because all it really requires in terms of how to move against it is a simple attachment of hand to body and outward rotation to resist the back hook and all the worst that could follow. And we'll go to bars, and we'll start out against the loose bar. If you happen to be in sit-out, the opponent has a double underhook and releases on that and comes to the side and grabs chin and puts an over hook in, that is a bar in, and he starts to pull you back down flat, number one thing you think of would be crawl action. Go right into an immediate, powerful crawl action, rise to your knees, come out the side door, and go behind. One more time. If you're in a sit position and the opponent comes to a perpendicular position and pulls you down backward with chin and arm, loose bar we call it, you could do crawl action. Now if you attempt crawl action and he stops you in mid-action, you can't go all the way through with the crawl, then what you might do is take your free hand, place it against his head, push his head off your shoulder, and then sit up, and you'll have a drag opportunity on the near side. So if you don't have one, you've got the other. One more time with the drag action. You can pull back toward your back with loose bar and chin, and are attempting crawl but find it not workable, then you reverse your direction, push his hand, use your hand to push his head off your shoulder, sit up and do a near drag. Now, final item against loose bar would be if you attempt crawl and then it requires that you, because of his resistance, attempt to sit up to drag, but you find you can't get his head off your shoulder, then you go back to strong crawl action. So we've been pulled back, we attempt to crawl, it doesn't go. We attempt to push the head off the shoulder so we can sit up to drag, it doesn't go. We then continue on with a second effort on the crawl, come out the side door and get the go behind. If he has tight bar in and you're on your knees, either you were on your knees to begin with or he wasn't able to keep you from rising to your knees after he had applied it against you in a prone position, what you might want to think of first is keep your head up so he can't pry you over to your back. Keep your head up enough that he can't pry you over. Second, if his tight bar loosens a little bit, then you could pivot in, get an arm up to prevent him from going behind, and you catch him in front, perhaps reverse him. So against tight bar, when you are kneeling, keep your head up, look for an opportunity to pivot in and get your hand and arm up in the air to prevent his getting in behind you, catch him in front, and get at least the neutral point. Now, if he has tight bar and he has you prone on the mat, and he happens to be straddling your inside leg, we would begin a inside drag counter to that arm loop that he has, that tight bar that he has. You start inside, sit through to the inside, do drag action, place your feet into proper positions on his legs, and get your reversal by coming up on top. One more time. If the opponent has tight bar and we're prone, and he doesn't have anything else, he's just got the tight bar and he's covering our near leg, then we can sit inside, sit through to the inside, that is, and get into a drag position, position our feet, our legs properly so he can't counter move us, and then we work our way up on top and get our points. If he has tight bar on us, and we start to do an inside drag action, but he starts to come off our leg and get perpendicular, we would be entrapping ourselves. We'd be going to our own back without him making much effort to get us there. So we stop the inside drag action and instead turn back toward the front and thrust our arm to the front, break the tight bar, and then rise to outside knee, and then to both knees, and get our base. One more time from a different angle. He has the tight bar, and we're starting an inside drag. But as we get into the action, he gets off our leg and is getting perpendicular. We turn back to the front, thrust our arm to the front, and then rise to base outside knee first. If opponent has not only the tight bar, but also has the far wrist bar, the one-on-one, then as he starts to do pry-over action, if he's not smart enough to come enough toward the front before he starts to go around the head, we will be able, as he starts his pry action, we will be able to start far roll action and sit up, and then hip hoist and reverse him. One more time. He's got the tight bar, and he's got additionally a one-on-one, a wrist bar, and he begins to do a pry-over action to rotate us toward our back. We go into far roll action, sit up, hip hoist, trap him on his back. If, on the other hand, the opponent is very good with tight bar and does it properly, that is the pry-over part, and he comes around to he comes forward enough first and then around the head. In desperation, we go into a high bridge and then come up on him and again trap him on his back. One more time. High bridge action. can be very, very potent as a maneuver for reversal. So the opponent is prying us over. We sense ourselves going. Rather than stop and get trapped on our back, we go into high bridge action and